Good afternoon. We're a small group today, but we'll still go through our agenda. There is something that Patrick asked that we'll get to in a moment. But first, let me make sure that you can see my monitor with the LAK webinars displaying with the agenda, and that you can hear me. Okay, I'm going to assume that both are there. Thank you for your confirmations. I am recording the session and I will be making it available after the meeting is done. So if you have colleagues who weren't able to join today, please let them know that they will be able to see and hear what we've gone over today. Now, the first item that I have here is from LibLime. This is, I think, the third week, or at least the second week, that we haven't had a call with Patrick because he's been out of the office. So I don't have any actual verbal news to relay to you, but I do have, I have received an email from him that is asking about deleted items. As I understand it from his message, there is a difference of opinion probably in what we have as a procedure, or as a the software has as a procedure for deleting checked out items. In the first paragraph, he told me that, as you can see, that it appears that in academic Koha, you can delete a checked out item. And I just wanted to show you that that is in fact the case. Let me go back here to details. And I do have one item that is checked out. So when I display the item, I can choose, sorry. Sorry, I need to go back one screen and double check the barcode, 922. Okay. So when I go to the item record, I can tell the system that I want to go to this particular item. Okay. And when I go into edit this item, we'll see here that there is one that I have checked out that's available. If I go to the actual record itself, I can select that item. Sorry, I've done this before. I don't know why it's not working for me now. Okay, here we go. We have the option to delete. So when I come down here to my title that is checked out, which is the one which is 922, I can choose delete item, and it asks me to confirm the deletion. Now, at this point, what I think typically you have taught your circulation assistants to do is that if they see this, that they should cancel. However, sometimes they may click on delete, and there is a secondary warning that then comes up saying that the item could not be deleted. The following error conditions were encountered, and it says the item's checked out. You'll notice that there is an override and delete option that is given, and if the person who is handling this transaction has the permissions to do so, they can actually override and delete this record. I'm not going to do that right now, but I want to go back to the message that Patrick said or sent to me. He said that they that it definitely was not allowed in the libline code, the libline Koha code, and it was something that South Central was and the other public libraries were not able to do. What Patrick is asking is whether or not, if this was a requirement from the beginning, and in what I've looked at, I haven't seen anything that said that this is something that is required or that we wanted as one of our enhancements. So I'm not sure what the issue is, but since I wasn't sure if somebody had said this once upon a time, I wanted to ask you and about how you feel about keeping or removing this function. If an item is checked out to a person and it has not yet reached the long overdue lost status, do you want to be able to delete an item record even though the item is still checked out and there may be other things that you want to have done? Or do you want the screen warnings as they are now that would give you the capability of deleting an item, or would you want to, okay. That's what I was thinking. I can think of some example, I can think of some reasons why I would want to delete it. The question, will it remain on the patron's record? It says that if you go to the patron's lost items tab, the item is there, but it shows it's not lost. I wasn't able to verify that because I didn't actually want to delete an item that was checked out. That would be my concern. My supposition about that is that if the item is currently in a checked out status and has not reached the long overdue lost time period, that it would just be gone. It is likely that there would be some kind of a link out there in the system that might affect things. I've seen some support center tickets saying that in the past about items that either can't be accessed, or an item that has been left on a patron's record and the item isn't there anymore. So I think that that is a possibility. But if you're okay, I've got one person saying, or one library saying that they would like to keep the item could not be deleted, override and delete, because there are ways that you can then modify your permissions in order to either allow or disallow using it. Are there other opinions out there? Okay, I'd always assumed from the beginning of the use of Koha that people were okay with not being able to delete items that were checked out to someone. So I will answer Patrick's message with to keep the item could not be deleted, override and delete. I agree with him that it shouldn't be absolute. I think that there's always better to have options and give you different ways to control the situation. So that's how I will respond to Patrick and let them go from there. Okay, let me move on in our agenda. For the LAK 20 update, I sent along in a second mailing to the mailing list a checklist. Well, I'm calling it a checklist. Actually, it's just a listing of everything that is in the software or in the 5.20 release notes. And I called it a testing checklist because I wasn't sure how this should, what format this should take. So what I've done is I went through the release notes that I've shown you many times. It's in the on the LibLime site, their documentation site, which, as you know, was pretty much arranged in probably a time-related order rather than a functional-related order. So what I did is I took the information in that table. I've discovered how I can actually take that, even though it's a PDF, when you download it, I can take that PDF into Excel. And I do have an Excel spreadsheet from that as well, which is something that I can supply if you would prefer. Actually, I'll probably send both of them out again. But this is my first take on trying to organize that list so that it makes sense and that you'd be able to see the different areas where there is a lot of features that either need to be tested to make sure that they work the way that we think that they're supposed to, or features that have been added into the software that you need to be aware of. So I started the list by just trying to make sure I had everything that was about permissions in one section. So I have the permissions that were identified in the spreadsheet that Jane did, and added in from the text of different pieces in the spreadsheet additional explanatory information. When there was information about where documentation can be found, I did copy that into this as well. So I tried to get everything from that spreadsheet that we were viewing on the web into something that could maybe organize things a little bit differently. The second part of this document is the new system preferences. And in the new system preferences, I don't have any documentation links. So some of these are kind of, if you can interpret what the words mean that are on the system preference screen, that helps. A lot of the circulation ones that are listed here are all related to the merger of the code. There are some new features that are available, and those features are listed below in some of the descriptions about the different pieces that have been added. But these are the actual system preferences that you should be looking for. There are, as you can see, there are, at least in the Waldo Sandbooks, there is also a couple of the system preferences that still show up as local use. I'm expecting that that will actually change, and that at some point it'll be with the the appropriate category. There are two new system preferences that I found in the notes, or in the release notes, that I wanted to make sure that you were aware of. There's one called Retain Last Borrower and one Keep Previous Borrower Interval. And what these are to be used for is for patron anonymization. As if you were on the calls or if you've been on previous calls, you know that there is a change in the delete patron anonymization tool that is available. And when I asked Jane about these two system preferences, she told me that that's part of the remaining development that needs to be done on the patron anonymization. So those will be here. Those will be there eventually. Okay, the next part of it is new functionality and enhancements by module. And again, where I had documentation information, I put this in. There are some things that I think, especially under administration, that might be interesting to be on the lookout for. And if you have time and interest, you can play around in the Waldo sandbox and try and do some of these. In the libraries and groups, individual branches can now customize their own checkout receipts. That's the print slip or the quick slip when you're checking things out. And you can do that in the branch code policy. There is information in the Super Librarian Guide. Essentially, what you need to add in there is HTML formatted information that you would want to have on your own checkout receipt. I don't have any examples of that right now. My guess is that for most of you, whatever the default format is of the slips, the receipts, are probably still going to be okay. While there are branches in the libraries, in a lot of our libraries, there are not 52 branches like, for example, South Central has. So my guess is that this will probably be a more minor piece for you. The next one, however, probably is something that you'll want to study and play around with. This is the custom item statuses, and this feature is new. It's available in the software in the administration section of the software. And let me just, I know that we've looked at this before, but let me show you again. In administration, the basic parameters section includes this custom item statuses. The custom item statuses that are already programmed in are for the pieces that we used to use as additional information if you entered a brief circulation record, so an item could be checked out. We had the brief circulation record that you could check and keep with this. You'll notice that all of those have been identified in here. There was one that I added that was a suppress item, and that is something that I can show you in a little bit. But these are pretty much, you can set up any custom item status that you would like to have, that you would like to appear to books. So let's see, the ones that aren't here that might be useful might be if you want to identify missing material separate from lost, especially with the changes that have come with the lost status. There are pieces that you might want to put in here, like missing, or see, sent to bindery is already here. I've noticed that in some of the different authorized values that you have, there are options that you've added into the authorized values that you might find useful to trace in the custom item statuses as well. This feature is documented, and it is, and it is available in the Superlibrarian Training Guide. It makes, after you read through that, it'll make a whole lot more sense. In the Waldo Sandbox, and here we come to the example that I have, if you search the catalog for, we'll just do this, in the staff interface, you will see that I have to move things around here. You can see that there is a suppress item flag that is for the first item in the list. And when you view this item in the staff interface, you will see the suppress item, and that tells you that it's suppressed. Ben, I'll get to your question in a minute. If I were to sign out and search like a patron would search, I would only see the 3 items that are available. I would not see the one that says suppressed. So that's one of the uses of the custom statuses. I don't know who put in for the anonymization enhancements. I'm not even sure what they're thinking of in terms of that. I was really surprised the first time that I saw it on the list, and I had communicated with Jane about it a couple of times, and evidently it wasn't working quite the way that they thought it was going to work, and they're rethinking that. We certainly didn't put anything in on this, and I can't imagine, well, I can't imagine. I can't imagine with the circulation that most public libraries have that they definitely wanted to do something. I think they've taken the opportunity of the Code Fusion to rethink through some of these things. And the previous feature that was the delete patron anonymization tool was somewhat dangerous to use. So I think that that was part of the reason why they are doing this differently, so that in the tools you'll now be able to delete patrons without touching anonymization. But until I get a little bit more information from them, I'm not going to understand what it is that they're working on this. The information in the release note said that for libraries that want to retain the previous borrower until the item was checked out to someone else, this would allow that to happen. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see what it's going to end up being. Okay. The other nice thing that I thought was useful here is that if you have borrowers who are constantly losing their IDs and end up with different, end up having different IDs, and then one might show up, an ID might be found by someone else, and then someone else may try to use it. One thing that I have noticed, and while I'm here on the patron, I'll show you a couple of things. but there is a new section in the patron display in the detail that says previous cards, and you can have multiples here, which is kind of interesting. And you also have an option to restore that card if you want to. I suspect this will be more used in public libraries than it will be in academic, but just know that if you have patrons who are forgetful and forget where they put their ID, and when they come to the library they don't have one and need to get a new card, you'll be able to keep track of all of the different IDs that are there. Since I'm on a patron record, I just want to point a few things out. I'm not going to go through each and everything in the spreadsheet, but there are a few things that I wanted to point out here. I've already pointed out last time we met that the left-hand side of the patron record is arranged a little bit differently, and there are different options here than were there before. There is another item, another thing that I found in the release notes that really doesn't stand out to you unless you know what it is for, what it's to be used for. There are two different timeout values that you can set up. If you want to have the server timeout, in other words, you want to identify how long someone can stay signed on until the server will sign them off. So you can identify that. I haven't played around with this, mostly because I haven't stopped to think how many seconds I would want after logging on that I would want it to be disconnected. You'll also notice there's an enable column here, so I could put some value in here and just not enable it, so it wouldn't do that. There's also application timeout, so you can determine how long the system should wait before your browser will log you off. If you have, for example, if at your circulation desk you use the terminal itself intermittently, so you're not on it 100% of the time working on it, you may want to identify a value that you put in here. So if there has not been a transaction for 10 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, that it would sign you out of the application, so that when you went to use the system the next time, you would have to actually start the session up again and log on, so that there would be a little bit more security that was available. I think that this is one that there is documentation on it, and I think that until you read the documentation, you might not want to turn those on. It's something that is definitely up to you, but that's something that is there. These timeouts, this is the same information that you will see in the user preferences for your account. And for purposes of your account, the timeouts are not shown when you go to your account. So let me go to my account home. So everything, excuse me, that was on the first, that was there before is still there, but the timeouts are not identified here. So a patron cannot change their own timeouts. It's all controlled from within the patron record itself. Okay, let me go back over here. And just a couple of more words about how this is organized. I organized this by module. I sort of lumped the new functionality and the enhancements into one, just so that I could get everything about one module together. So as you read through these, there are some things that I have added in to, so you can see something as it demonstrates or as it is set up in the system, so you can see what it looks like. There are a few things that were there for cataloging. I had expected to see a lot of different things for circulation, but really there has not been an awful lot about the actual circulation pieces of it. There was one check-in or check-out option that was added, and there was one thing about fines that was added in. This is one that I had a hard time figuring out where I wanted to put this in this document, because it does talk about MySQL. But trying to do reports for fines has been problematic for about 1 or 2 versions now. And they've added in some indexes on the MySQL level to help with that. However, while they tell us that they've done this, I have no idea what this will do. So this one I am going to pursue with Jane to find either examples that we can look at, or try and find out where there might be some documentation for this one. It's something that, if it improves response time, that's good, but we need to know exactly how how we can use that. There are changes in holds. There are 3 that are listed here, but I know that there are others that are being requested. I discovered that the discovery layer has an awful lot of changes. One of them is a basic carousel that can be used. So if at your library you would like to have a carousel, you could certainly do that. Let me go back over here. Okay, and I did set up the carousel for the Waldo Sandbox. So there's a time delay of a few seconds between screens. And what it will do, it will keep circulating through that for you if you want to. And if you want to use it, it's really pretty easy to set up. On the release notes, what I did is I copied in the section of the discovery layer with how I have the different fields set up, so that you can see how you can set it up. It's going to be pretty easy. But there were an awful lot of differences in the discovery layer that I noticed. And this is something that you'll want to read through, make sure that you understand where it is. Most of the information here has been updated in the discovery layer guide, but not all of it. So it will take a little bit of time, I think, to familiarize yourself with all of these. Enhanced content, if you use any of these different services, there are setups that need to be done. Jane did give me a brief description of the setup for each one of those. I have that. I can make that available either on this document or just through the Waldo support site. But I am not aware that anyone is using these services right now. So I just wanted you to know that they were there. Patrons is where there's been a lot of work, a lot of changes. And I'm just going to scroll here so you can see that there is a lot of stuff about patrons. This, I think, I know you didn't have a lot of time to look at this ahead of time, ahead of the meeting starting, So I would suggest that you read through these things. If you have the opportunity to go into the Waldo Sandbox and test and play around with some of these, I would encourage you to do that. After you have a chance to read through them, if you let me know which ones you want to see demonstrated or which ones you want to have additional information about, I will be happy to do that and have that ready for our next meeting. So hopefully we will be able to pick out the things that are important to us. The new serials module is now working better than it did before. Let me go back over here. And I will show you what I've been able to accomplish so far. In the brief information in that release note, look, it tells you that the script, the modification or the conversion script for your existing serials subscription records into this format has not yet been done. I know that Michelle has been working with it. I haven't seen any results from that. Ben, have you heard anything from Michelle about that? No? Okay. I'll check with them again and see if they have some information. If they could get the script running and run it against the Waldo Sandbox, at least we could see what I have in there. In lieu of not being able to see anything that's in the title or in the serials module, I did enter a new title. I pulled in a bibliographic record and through the cataloging editor through Z3950. And since I have the bib record in, I was able to create, excuse me, the serial itself. The way that you set this up for a new publication is you have different areas that you will fill in. The first one is obviously you want the publication itself. So this is the basic information about the journal. It sets up whether or not you're going to auto-create items, what the next issue is. You also have the opportunity, once you've done this, to go in and edit this. It will also keep track of items as you receive them so that you know what the first one was received and the most recent one. I'm going to cancel out of that. In this setup, there's a separate area for chronology and enumeration. So you are able to either choose one of the preset chronology enumeration patterns that are there. And if you want to edit it, if a publication changes from monthly to quarterly, you will be able to do that as well. You'll be able to edit it. The one that I have set up here is just a regular monthly one. You can choose to do your counters differently. So if your volume number starts in March instead of in January, you can identify that in here. And we also have our predictions table, so it will tell us what we will be able to receive. The numbers that I used in here are all, they're just very basic. I didn't go to the journal and actually look at it to make sure I had the right volumes and the right numbers. I just picked out something simple. And then the next piece of it is the subscriptions area. In the subscriptions area, you can set up, let me go into edit here, you can set up the subscription itself. You can choose your branch from a drop-down menu, And one thing that is kind of nice about it now is that from within the serial subscription record itself, you can choose your vendor from the acquisitions vendor list. So I was able to add EBSCO to this, and then I can also identify whether or not I'm going to create items and create PO lines. You can't see how I set this, and that's one thing I need to tell them about, that if I'm going to edit this, I want to see the values that exist in the record. And I had, when I created this record, I did click create items, and I did click on create PO lines because I wanted to see how that was going to work. If you choose to create items, you can set up a template that contains your item defaults. And the way that that works, and I can't show that to you now, but you get a list of all of the possible item fields that you might want. You can select out of those the fields that you want to have some value in when you create the item. So I just set up some of them. Obviously, you won't have a barcode until the item is received, but it's there. I also did a little bit of work on a routing list. I did add a patron in here, even though you don't see it. But adding to the routing list is really simple to do. This is about as far as I got with testing in this particular, in the new serials module. It seems to be relatively easy to use once things are working correctly. But again, those of you who are using serials currently, I would encourage you to go in and to create new subscriptions, or I'm sorry, add in new titles, new subscriptions, and let me know how you think it's working. It is, it's more like the way Get It is set up, so that there are different panes and windows that you can look at. It's been a while since I've looked at serials. Obviously, since I've been on this version, I haven't been able to look at the serials that's in 5.18. But I know that setting up some of the serials prediction patterns, etc., were kind of tricky to do. In our serials homes, there's also the claims. In order to use claims, you have to be associated with a vendor. And I haven't looked at this one yet. Like I said, I'm just getting started, but we can identify different templates. So if you have a pattern or something for enumeration or chronology, you'll be able to set those up pretty easily. Okay, let me go back over here. There are a few things that have changed in the tools area. The one that I thought might be most useful for some of you is the one about the patron record having no email addresses. You'll now be able to set it so that you will be able, excuse me, to print the notices locally. There are a couple of pieces that I found in the release notes that are not done yet. I should have added one more, but offline circ is in the process of being written, and the ability to set individual default values for creating items. So if you have multiple people, either full-time staff or students, you can set individual default settings eventually for creating item records. This is something that, since it's not there yet, I can't show you. And the third thing that I should have here is the anonymization, the way that the anonymization is going to work. There's one other one I wanted to talk about, and that is right at the top, the lost item handling. I'm going to switch displays again. And show you some of the information. The last time I displayed this for you, there were a lot fewer items in here. It's now up to 48 different items. And some of these are definitely bugs and some are closed. But the one that I wanted to show you specifically was the information that I had sent about the lost statuses. Okay. The changes in the statuses brought me to the realization that there are a couple of places, and I put them all together in this one note. The lost statuses that you have set up in your authorized value itself is mostly the same from library to library, but there are some notable differences. I think Hartford has maybe 8 or 9 different items or different different values for the lost authorized value. And with version 5.20, I discovered I couldn't see all of my lost statuses. So seeing how it was or how it was described, and then how I was not able to see and do things in the Waldo sandbox that I could see and do in other library sandboxes, I was concerned. So I asked the questions. And there's already a problem with the lost items report because it's looking for the old statuses. And the second thing that she had here is custom lost statuses are mapped into the new item status feature. This preserves previous functionality since items with lost values don't circulate. So if an item had a loss or a custom lost status, for example, missing in transit, a new item status of that label will be created and the item assigned that status. Basically, what I got out of this is that I'm still not understanding how this is going to work. The long overdue script will lose the statuses long overdue and lost. And the only certain thing is that lost always charges if fees are defined, which basically equates to what is set up in almost all of the Waldo libraries as lost system supplied. So the differentiation between lost library applied and lost system applied appears to be a little bit different. As I get more information about the lost pieces, I'll keep you informed. But at least they know that there are questions about the lost statuses. Based on the information that I have listed in the file that I sent with the agenda, you can see pretty much that I don't think we're at a point where we can say that the software is ready to go into production. So the rest of the 520 update is that since we haven't talked to Patrick in a couple of weeks, I don't have his newest prediction for when the sandboxes would be updated. And I'm going to, after seeing how many of the reports are still identified as bugs in, well, down here, those are things that I think we need to make sure are working before anyone starts using this version in production. Hopefully, I'll be able to talk with Patrick next week and find out for sure what their current timing is on the system. Any questions about any of that? I know you didn't have time to read through the document. It's basically what you've seen before in the release notes, just rearranged so that you can see everything relating to patrons in one spot rather than having to scroll through the document multiple times. Okay, before we meet next time, if you can at least scan through the list, and if you see anything that you have questions about, send me an email and I'll try and get answers before next time. In the meantime, the enhancement list update. This is, I did tell you that we did get the level of efforts back from Patrick. We do have the hours. John has asked me to identify 5 of the items, or 5 of the enhancements, so we can get definite quotes on them. And I haven't done that yet. I wanted to make sure that the things that I chose were the ones that you actually wanted. Okay, I guess I had already had this up, but these are the enhancements that were there. John and I had talked a little bit, and we talked about saying, well, let's just choose all the small ones first and see how far the money goes. I still don't know how many dollars are available for us to spend on enhancements. But out of the 14 or so, I think it's 14, John wants me to pick 5 as a start. So if there are any in here that you are particularly desirous of having in the software, if you could just send me a quick email saying which ones. I'm going to not send John an answer immediately, so I would like to have something from you on the ones that you would want us to pursue first within a week, if at all possible. The idea going forward is that if we're able to get all of the 5 implemented quickly, then we would continue on with the list until we ran out of money. So that's all. That's sort of where we are with that. The only one that is even considered large is the one about retaining selected mark fields and subfields. So it depends on how we would want to have that one done, whether or not it would be medium or large. But I'm not sure why the comment was made in here, but I did leave those comments in there. I will send this list out on the Waldo support mailing list today, so that you have them and you can look through them and decide which ones you would like to have us pursue. My goal is to have all of them pursued. Basically, what I'm just asking for is an order of importance. Okay, that brings us to the recordings. Last time, I think I showed you a sample of one of the things that was sent, or that I had put onto YouTube, and my was to get more of those done. but I have not had a chance to get more of the recordings out there. I will do that, and it will probably be in a specific channel so that you'll be able to get to all of them pretty easily. Other than that, I don't have anything else for today. Is there anything any of you would like to bring up? Okay, that's all that I've got for today. I will try to get the recording for this on YouTube so we can look at it, or a little bit of it, next week. Until then, our next meeting is on May 10th. Thank you all for attending, and we'll see you next time.